Hi guys, I'm glad you stay with us. It was a long day for somebody who started from the early today, but now we start an international section. It's all in English. Obviously, Money speaks English. First presentation, we have Chad White from Litmus Software. Litmus Software, I guess I don't have to introduce it, but obviously Chad will do the job. Chad, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great today. Thank you for having me.
Okay, great. Okay, you know all this timing things and everything. We're gonna go with your presentation, and hopefully we'll have some time at the end for the questions. So if you do have a questions, shoot. Just use a hyper comment on our web page. Okay, Chad, it's all yours.
Thank you very much. And again, thank you again for having me. Today, we're going to talk about the future of email marketing. What's it going to look like? We did a big report called Email Marketing in 2020. And we surveyed thousands of consumers and marketers about the future of email marketing. We asked 20 experts about their views, how they saw things changing over the next several years. And they had some really interesting predictions that covered a wide span of what email marketing is about. So everything from the subscriber experience to inbox functionality to deliverability, design, coding, the technology provider landscape, the inbox provider landscape, just a really great sort of fleshed out full picture of things. And my name is Chad White. You can follow me on Twitter at Chad S. White. I'm the research director at Litmus, which is a email building, testing, and analytics software platform. We help tons of marketers make sure that their emails look and function appropriately across all the different email environments that there are. Currently, our platform covers over 50 of them. I'm also the author of Email Marketing Rules and literally thousands of blog posts and articles on email marketing best practices and strategies. And over the next 20 minutes, we're going to talk about some of the major themes from the Email Marketing in 2020 report. Namely, we're going to talk about channel stability. We're going to talk about a single view of the customer. We're going to talk about hyper-personalization and machine learning and automation. We're going to get right to it. First up is channel stability. Needless to say, all 20 of the email experts that we consulted with had a pretty rosy vision of the future of email marketing. And frankly, our polls of email marketers in general were quite optimistic. For instance, we asked them if they saw email marketing's return on investment being higher or lower or staying around the same by the year 2020. And nearly half of them said that they saw it going higher. Only about a third said they saw it going lower. And that's pretty good news, because right now, depending on what research you look at, email marketing has either the number one or the number two return on investment of all the digital marketing channels. So that should make everyone feel pretty good. We did consider that marketers were a little biased. We didn't want to just talk to them. So we talked to over 1,000 consumers in the United States. And we asked them which channels they saw still existing in 10 years. We had our fingers crossed a little bit. We weren't sure exactly what they were going to say. Thankfully, they were the most optimistic about email still existing in 10 years, followed by Facebook and cable television. Those are sort of the top three. They were like pretty tightly bunched together. And I think that that's probably a pretty fair representation of the people who are at the top. So these are the channels that consumers thought were most likely to still exist in 10 years. Further down the list was Twitter and Snapchat, postal mail letters, not parcels, but just postal mail letters, followed by Pinterest, print media, and landline telephones, which people were kind of across the board not terribly optimistic about still existing. Clearly, a lot of people ready to cut the cord and just go mobile. I was actually slightly surprised by some of these results. I was kind of shocked that Snapchat, for instance, was so high. I kind of see that as a little bit of a line in the sand. If I was postal mail and Pinterest and print media and landline telephones, I would feel pretty bad about following behind Snapchat, which to me seems like it's a little bit of a flash in the pan, a little bit of an of the moment channel. But the people have spoken, and this is what they said. But this is just the overall view. We dived into this data a little bit to look at some more important points. Namely, we looked at age groups and how optimistic they were that email was still going to be around. And this, I think, was really surprising because I think we've been told over and over again over the last 5-8 years that young people don't like email, and that email is for old people. Well, that's not what our study found. Again, we spoke to like 1,225 Americans, and what we found was that sort of older millennials in that sort of 25-year-old to 34-year-old range were the most optimistic about email being around. Now, we didn't ask them if they loved email, but we asked them if it was still going to be around. So they were optimistic that this was still going to exist. But frankly, even the younger millennials, those like 18 to 24, as a group, they were collectively way more optimistic than the 55-year-olds and older, who, again, I think have sort of traditionally been thought of as sort of like, the big users of email. So this information was a little bit shocking. We also looked at higher income consumers who obviously, because of their buying power, have sort of a disproportionate amount of power in sort of deciding what companies do. You really have to, as a business, you really need to pay attention to your best customers. And a lot of those best customers tend to be the ones that are sort of above average earners. And so across the board, this group of consumers was considerably less optimistic about all channels, but they were still the most optimistic about email at 65%. It's worth noting that they were slightly more optimistic about cable TV than Facebook, which was a flip from the overall data, and Pinterest was quite a bit higher, and Snapchat was quite a bit lower. But still, landline telephones down at the very bottom. So I think given where email currently is, it's currently has the highest adoption, like it's ubiquitous, like 100 billion more email accounts than there are Facebook accounts. It's the highest return on investment, sort of in that 1 or number 2 slot. Sometimes it's number 2 to organic search in terms of ROI. And the fact that consumers like kind of overwhelmingly currently prefer for commercial communications to come to them via email, this all speaks really well to the fact that investments that you make now in email marketing are going to be really sound investments for the future, and certainly going forward. Like you shouldn't have any doubts that that this is a good channel for investments. So part of email marketing stability is going to come from the fact that it's being integrated into other channels as organizations are in the process of de-siloing. All of that is leading to a single view of the customer. Companies are desperate to be able to take the information from their stores and their email and their social channels and their direct mail channels and put it all together so they can see what a particular customer is doing sort of in totality. Not to see little bits of the picture, but to see the full picture. This study from eConsultancy and Adestra showed that 84% of marketers agree that 5 years in the future, email is going to be fully integrated with other marketing channels. So this is a pretty strong point in terms of looking at the future of email marketing. There seems to be almost overwhelming consensus that email is going to be tightly integrated with social and mobile and other channels, and sort of not operating in a silo as we often see. And our experts had the same point of view on this. Dave Chaffee at Smart Insights says that today that single view of the customer is really kind of a myth for most businesses, but it's not going to stay that way as we see email integrated into sort of marketing cloud services. Kara Olson at DEG talks about how over the past years there's been a ton of data integrations, and that's like setting everybody up to be focusing on that single view of the customer over the next several years. I will point out that Kara, who works at DG, this big agency and consultancy, they work with a lot of big customers, and I think it's true that it's sort of that enterprise level. These sort of enterprise level customers are well along the path of integrating. But certainly when you get sort of in the mid-market and certainly sort of the small businesses, I think to Dave's point, there's a lot of progress that needs to happen there in terms of integrating channels. But definitely the enterprise companies are kind of leading this data integration, this channel integration effort. So Eric Stahl at the Salesforce Marketing Cloud talks about how all of this is going to be breaking down these data silos and allowing businesses to create this consistent subscriber experience across the entire lifecycle. Right now, life cycles are kind of disjointed, and as we get that single view, we're going to be able to kind of smooth out what that life cycle, arc looks like, and have better communications along the way. Chris Lynch at the Oracle Marketing Cloud talks about the convergence of marketing and advertising technology. I think this is a really important point. Right now, there's a little bit of a kind of a war brewing between MarTech and ad tech, and it seems like marketing tech is sort of winning that battle. And although none of our experts said this, I do wonder if we're not going to get to the point pretty soon where marketing technology companies, especially big companies, like the Oracles and Salesforces and Adobes and such, aren't going to be acquiring more ad tech companies. So that'll be something to kind of keep our eye on. But there's sort of no doubt that all of these channels are coming together. Lauren McDonald over at Silverpop at IBM talks about how email isn't going to just benefit from being integrated into other channels, but that those other channels are going to benefit from being integrated into email. So it's not that email it's going to continue to be a really awesome, high-performing channels, but the data that comes out of email is going to be great for powering other channels. So this kind of this coordination between the channels, using data from email marketing. Email marketing generates a ton of data in terms of opens and clicks and everything else. That information can be fed back into other channels and make those channels more effective as well. So it's not a one-sided benefit where email just benefits from being integrated into these other channels. Those other channels are going to benefit from email being integrated into them. So having that single view of the customer is going to allow marketers to send individually relevant emails. But in order to do that, so they're going to do that through hyper-personalization. This more research from eConsultancy and Adestra showing slightly lower levels than we saw with the integration survey, but here we've got 76% of marketers agreeing that in the future, email marketing communications are all going to be personalized. I think there's still going to be a lot of room for broadcast messages, but there's sort of no doubt that email marketing is heading in this direction of being more personalized. And a lot of our experts agree. Jill Retto at Epsilon talks about by 2020, hyper-personalization is going to reach a significant level, along with all these other things, rule-based triggers, assimilation of the mobile channel, and also connecting data from other channels. So this data integration, cross-channel integration. Eric Stahl from Salesforce Marketing Cloud talks about how marketers are going to use all this information for greater personalization, and talks about this convergence between the physical and the digital worlds. I think that's going to be really important. Now, not only is email a little bit siloed and is sort of on its way to being integrated with other digital channels, that's happening, but the next thing that's going to need to happen even more is the merger of sort of digital and physical worlds. And we're starting to see a little bit of that now. But for instance, mobile barcodes where you can take your phone and get it scanned and get on an airplane, or activate a coupon at checkout in a store. I think that things like mobile and like geofencing and beacons and things of that nature are really going to connect up the physical and digital worlds, and email is going to be certainly a big part of that. Kristen Narragon over at Adobe talks about all these different contextual data clues that email marketers are going to use. And just to sort of name off a few to kind of give you the full scope, it's not just time, it's also location, it's weather, it's various events and behaviors. All these things working together are going to inform this hyper-personalization, this sort of the right content being delivered at the right time. And she thinks that by 2020, we're going to get very skilled at using all of these various data points together, and it's going to become sort of the status quo. So Ryan Phelan over at Adestra, he agrees, but he makes a really good point that it's not just about the technological capabilities that marketers have. There is a bit of a mind shift going on right now, and millennials are driving a lot of it. It's this idea that millennials don't believe in privacy in the same way that, say, Gen Xers and older people do. They live their lives online. It's how they grew up, and they don't really get incredibly excited about privacy issues. And he makes the point that as millennials get older and drive more and more of buying decisions, that they're going to start to kind of change that the kind of ethos of how marketers go to market. He thinks that we may even reach a point where some of the things that are in the movie Minority Report are able to happen. For any of you that have seen that movie, which I highly recommend you do. He really is stressing the fact that people are going to be, these younger people are going to be driving that change in how marketers think about using data, and I guess how receptive the marketplace is to that. So that hyper-personalization is going to be awesome, but it's also going to be incredibly complex. In fact, it's going to be so complex that marketers are going to have to rely on machine learning and automation to make it happen. It's just going to be too much. And so we asked marketers whether or not they thought that machine learning, AI, and predictive software would ever determine the majority of the content in marketing emails. And I'll be honest, I was a little surprised by the results. Nearly 2/3 said that they did expect that to happen at some point. I think probably not quite so bullish that it'll reach that level, but clearly a lot of marketers think that is the case. I think that actually speaks well to, even if it doesn't happen, I think it speaks well to marketers being open to that kind of symbiotic relationship with software. That's sort of like that human intelligence and the machine intelligence working together to kind of solve these marketing problems. So Tim Watson at Zetasphere talks about how machine intelligence is going to manage and control messaging to every individual to create these integrated experiences that we've been kind of talking about and kind of holding up as like the paradigm over the last several years. But in very few cases does it really kind of play out that way currently. To get to that point, things are going to have to dramatically change. Morgan Stewart over at Trendline has really interesting ideas about how that's going to happen. And what he says is that we're really going to have to divorce customer data from content, completely divorce it, and use algorithms to kind of match them up. And what that's going to essentially look like is companies approving content modules and targeting models. So essentially not building emails anymore. We won't build emails. What we'll do is we'll build bits of content, and we'll build targeting models, sort of audience models, and we'll allow the machines to sort that all out and put those things together and to actually create the emails. Tim makes the point that it's not just going to be those content blocks that machines are putting together for us, but also we'll probably also have AI writing subject lines, and frankly, probably a lot of other marketing copy. They'll take stabs at it, and we'll use that in A/B testing and other things to verify that those are the right directions to go. So I think what's clear is that there's going to be a lot more sort of predictive machine learning, machine intelligence, artificial intelligence stuff going on, not only in determining what's in an email in terms of content blocks, but also the messaging itself. What does the messaging look like? What words do we use? That's clearly going to be a role that machines are going to be having a big hand in. So the result of all of these changes and improvements is that subscriber expectations are going to rise to the point that, in the words of Sims Jenkins over at Brightwave, email marketing isn't going to just work. It's not going to just because. I think that we're a little bit spoiled as email marketers. The return on investment, the cost structure is so favorable that honestly, we can send out kind of mediocre, not great broadcast emails and still make a decent return. Sims argues that is not going to be the case in the years ahead, and that consumer expectations are going to dramatically change, and that consumers are going to reject and kind of weed out, broadcast emails that aren't relevant to them, and that they'll ignore them or unsubscribe or even junk them. Andrew Bonar at Deliverability Limited makes the point that some of these best practices that we hold up today around permission and personalization and relevance, while all those things are going to be important in the future, they're going to be kind of seen as like a minimum acceptable standard. There's going to be a lot more that we as email marketers are going to have to do to stay in the good graces of our subscribers and also of the companies that control inboxes, so the ISPs out there. So there's a few things that are clear here. It's clear that email is going to remain an incredibly valuable channel for marketers in the years ahead. But what's also clear is that marketers need to change. They're going to have to work harder to build trust, to send relevant emails that work everywhere that email is read. And we didn't really talk about that so much, but there's also a lot of predictions around just where you're going to be reading emails. And it might be, on a dashboard on your refrigerator. It could be read to you in your car. So there's going to be a lot more places that email is going to be present. And your messages have to work all those places. And two, email marketers are going to have to stay flexible, stay curious, become, I think, a bit more collaborative than they are now, because email marketing is absolutely going to continue to evolve. We've seen huge changes over the last 5 years, especially around mobile. And there's going to be even more disruptions in the year ahead. You're going to have to stay nimble and be kind of flexible in our mindset as these changes come at us, and we need to learn how to work with others and integrate sort of across channels and across disciplines. So those are just a few of the things that we talk about in email marketing in 2020. If you want to learn about all the predictions that are in there, you can download it for free on litmus.com. I highly encourage you to do so. And if anybody has any questions, I'm more than happy to take them.
Okay, we do have some questions. I'll start with comments about all this personalization, hyper-personalization. You said millennials would not bother. I don't know what the age, but there are plenty of negative comments taken about privacy issue and everything. What's your personal opinion about that?
Sure, and I probably should have said, I probably should have brought this up when I was talking about it, but certainly views are different in the US than they are in Europe and across Asia. So maybe this might be a little bit of a cultural difference between the
Tell us,
US and.
your point of view would be American, average for American, or it's very personal?
So millennials are definitely way less concerned about privacy.
Okay, maybe. What's your personal point of view, or what's American point of view on the privacy? You said it's different here in Europe and in the United States. So could you elaborate?
Sure. So for instance, in the EU, there are a lot of laws around data and how it can be used and where it needs to be stored. There's been a lot of talk about, like, for instance, in Germany, they want to have data about Germans saved on servers in Germany. These are like not concerns at all in America currently. Certainly not at the level of government. There are people in America who definitely are concerned about privacy, but I think in general, as a society, Americans are a lot less concerned about it. And so as a consequence, we don't have a lot of laws that dictate, how companies can use data.
It's not only about law, isn't it? It's about, well, how people feel. For example,
Sure.
we had a Google Q&A, and actually Google's expert, he told us fridge. Actually, it's funny you mentioned fridge. Fridge. Very, very soon, Google fridge, I guess, will predict what kind of milk you want to buy, when you want to buy, where you want to buy, and tell you everything. Actually, it drives me crazy. I don't want my fridge telling me what to do. And
Sure.
you're talking about hyper-personalization about email. Basically, email will be tracking everything I'm doing, and after that, I'll be doing something, and it will be just show up and say, "Oh, do you want to buy, I don't know, something?" And I actually don't want this kind of hyper-personalization. Sure. Do you?
All right, I see where you're going. I see what your concerns are. So there's a few things that are going to happen. So first of all, hyper-personalization is really going to be for the people who want it. One of the things that we talk about in the report is, so Andrew Bono, who I mentioned there towards the end of my presentation, he believes that a lot of the things that we take for granted now, definitely in the US in terms of tracking, are going to be opt-in in the future. So it's not that marketers are going to be able to track everything you do and send all these creepy emails at you. We think that there are going to be, so for instance, like permission, like preference centers are going to evolve, where people will opt in and out of having certain things about them tracked. The thing about personalization is that the goal is to serve the subscriber, to serve the consumer, to serve the customer. And if it's not doing that, then businesses shouldn't do it. And a lot of those decisions will be made on individual levels, but it's incumbent upon businesses to give that choice to their customers. So if you don't want your fridge tracking everything that's going on in your fridge, like, you should be able to opt out of that because you don't want it. But on the other hand, if you found that useful, like, that's now an option for you. So there's going to be this line, and it's going to be different for different individuals. Again, I think there would be some laws in different countries that will kind of come into play, but we shouldn't lose sight of what the goal is of personalization. It's a service. It's supposed to make the experience better. And if it doesn't make the experience better, companies should not do it.
Yeah, as another question, it's a typical usual question. Okay, email is clear. We're gonna live with email. Email marketing is what else would you use to help it, to help your business, to help marketing? What else? Another tools or mechanism or anything?
Sure. Well, one of the predictions that's also in the report is this idea that email is going to become, like a portion of email is going to become kind of invisible. That it'll be, a lot of it will be machine to machine. So you talked about smart fridges. So for instance, you get low on milk, your fridge recognizes that you're low on milk, and your fridge sends an email to your shopping app. And so then your shopping app now has milk on its list. Then you go to the store and you buy milk, and your receipt gets emailed from the store to your financial software application, to your Mint or whatever you use to track your
This
finances.
sounds like a minority report. I agree. Okay, guys, it's very interesting. This part of this very interesting conversation about privacy, but okay, we don't have much time. We don't have more time for it. Thank you very much. So basically, if I can make it in one sentence, email marketing will live, will survive, and probably will be still one of the most important one. Thank you, Chad, for this.